Hey everybody, it's Mike. And so today I want to answer some questions that people have had about what are the red flags. So if you're new to this channel is dedicated to partners of people with borderline personality disorder, specifically romantic partners. And that is my focus here. So let me just make a disclaimer here. I am not a licensed counselor. I am not a psychologist. I am not a psychiatrist. I am not a mental health professional on any level. I am just simply sharing my thoughts, my experiences, my opinions, and my observations based on having been in a romantic relationship with somebody who had, in my estimation, very serious borderline personality disorder. This channel is not geared towards borderlines. Borderlines do come here, obviously, because we're talking about BPD. Bear in mind, I am not here to try and help or treat you. So if this is a helpful place for you to come, you're welcome. But bear in mind, I will most likely say things that will anger you, hurt your feelings, piss you off. I may be inaccurate about some of my understandings, and that's because of the two things I just said. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm not an expert in mental illness, nor am I a borderline. So all of my thoughts, my conclusions, observations, my guesses at what's going on is just that. And it's there because I'm sharing the way my view of it has helped me to escape from a state of really toxic codependence within myself. And let me be clear about that. You can be in a toxic state of codependence, in my opinion, even if you're not with your borderline. And so I have a three-pronged approach. It's not mine. I didn't make it up. It worked for me, and it works for a lot of people in a lot of different mental health areas. But the first one is to get help from a qualified therapist. Second one is to go to a 12-step group for codependence. Codependence Anonymous, Al-Anon, adult children of alcoholics. If you can get a hold of one of those should be helpful in learning how to focus on your responsibility in why you chase after toxic relationships. And then 3, having some kind of spiritual practice. I don't care what it is, whether it's you go to church, you go to mass, you go to meditation class, you go to yoga class, you have a personal Tai Chi practice, or something that gives you a connection to something that you perceive to be spiritual, even if you're agnostic or atheist, something. Those 3 approaches, those 3 steps has been what helped me to recover very quickly from a really feeling of hopelessness. And my experience with the borderline was incredibly debilitating and toxic. And so I made this channel just simply to share my thoughts and my feelings just for myself, just to get it out, because I really needed help, and I really needed some way to stay out of the obsession and the addiction and chasing after somebody who was harmful for me. So that's what this channel is about. If you are borderline, as I said, and you come here, you do so at your own risk. I may say something that hurts your feelings, and you are responsible. Please do not take anything I say here as something that should be as a substitute for real professional help from a therapist, a qualified mental health professional. All right. So people have been asking me to talk about the red flags. So let me give you another blanket statement, which I fully believe I could be wrong, but there's nothing that you're going to say that's going to talk me out of this. So dislike it all you want. My opinion is not going to change, and that is if you have become emotionally intertwined with somebody with borderline personality, untreated borderline personality disorder on any level for more than 24 hours. If you get involved emotionally and there's a connection, especially a romantic one that lasts, I would say, for more than 24 hours, then by definition, you are a codependent. If you don't know what a codependent is, go look it up. I talk about it a lot. My approach on this channel is the same approach that I have taken towards myself, which is ruthlessness. I am absolutely ruthless with myself about being honest about my part in creating whatever goes on in my life, positive or negative. I take full responsibility for everything that I've created in my life. That may be confusing for people who say, then why are you doing that 12-step work where you have to admit that you're powerless? That's a whole other thing, but you can still admit that you're powerless and still be completely, fully responsible. This is also, I would imagine, be true for borderlines who have a mental illness that they may be powerless over. They're powerless over their impulses and their emotional reactions. And but that doesn't mean that you're not responsible for the actions that you take and for the very real effects. And that's the tough part. You know, one of the things I found with my borderline is that she had a mantra response to everything, which was, well, that sounds like your problem. You know, there's something, you know, again, that it's the irony and the projection is just so clear. You know, I could yawn or blink or look at my watch, and that would be enough to set her off and make me responsible for her, you know, reactions and projection to whatever the hell pushed her buttons. I had a look in my eye, or, you know, I had to fart or something, and that was it. So she had no problem blaming me for her feelings, but when she actually did something in real objective reality that was abusive and hurtful, and for me, when I said something about it, she would say, well, that sounds like your problem. I'm not responsible for that. Any case, again, if you're a borderline and you feel like I'm bashing borderlines, it's because I'm a codependent and I'm trying to heal. And in order for that to happen, we have to stop making excuses. And that's what codependents do. They make excuses, they minimize, they deny the really toxic behavior of the disease of BPD. If you are borderline, you have a mental illness. And so I make a distinction between you and your illness, and I am blaming your illness for what you do. You happen to be attached to it. So yeah, you're the one that we have to get away from because your illness is toxic. But that doesn't mean you're a bad person or that you don't deserve love. The only way through it is to get some help, because I don't know what borderlines need to do to recover. I don't try and tell you what to do. Go talk to a therapist and figure that out. If you're in a relationship with a borderline, and if they are in some kind of therapy and they are, you know, successfully coping and learning how to overcome the negative actions and effects of their illness, great, then this isn't the channel for you. So having said that, if you are codependent, meaning you are a partner or closely attached to a borderline, then there is going to be a very strong impulse within you, and probably from without you, to make excuses, to minimize, and to not be honest about the abusive behavior that you are having to endure. And you will probably be minimizing your own selfish need and attachment, and you will be making yourself into a martyr, and you will be seeing yourself as a hero and as the healer, when in reality you are also dysfunctional, and destructive. Although you've chosen to take on the form of the victim, you don't see how you're just being destructive to yourself and others. You are just simply someone who cares too much or has empathy. And those are just ways of co-signing your own dysfunction. So both parties are equally responsible. The question that we're talking about today is what are the red flags? Because what I've said before, and I'm not the one who made this up. I heard this when I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on with this woman that I was with, and I felt like I was losing my mind. I was really in a lot of pain, and I was extremely confused, and I felt like I was going insane. And I was trying to figure out, was I insane? Is this really happening? Am I right that I feel like this person is really fucking with me? Or, I really was losing it. If you're familiar with the term gaslighting, that's what borderlines, their disease makes them geniuses at gaslighting you, making you responsible for their internal reality, and making you responsible for their abusive behavior. And so I was gaslit, and I just did not know what the hell was happening, and was I crazy or not. And I started looking at trying to figure out if maybe there was something wrong with her, because it was starting to look like I think she's not sane. It's not that she was an evil person. She was a quiet borderline. The quiet borderlines, in my experience, are the toughest to figure out. Raging ones, yeah, they love you one minute, the next minute they're throwing, hatchets at you. All right, this person, there's something really wrong. Quiet borderlines, they love you one minute, they disappear for 3 hours, they come back, and in a very calm way just start slicing you to pieces in ways that make you feel like, why is she just complimented me, but I just got my entrails pulled out. How did that happen? That's because they have a very sophisticated defense mechanism, and it comes from a mental illness. It's not their fault. They didn't ask for it. They are responsible for the effects of it. There is such a thing as karma, but at the same time, I have to acknowledge that they have a disease. That they have a disease. By disease, I'm using that in the 12-step, jargon. I mean a mental illness. All right. Sorry. So to get to the question at hand, what are the red flags? So let me just think off the top of my head. Red flags are if they go after you intensely, like from the first moment that you meet, you and he or she feel this intense, like, oh my God, I've never known this intensity before. You're my soulmate. Now the term now is twin flame. You're my twin flame. I've known you forever. Oh my God, you see right into me. It's like you vibe with me and I vibe with you, and you fall in love. You begin to, so that's, red flag number one. There's an intense attraction. That in and of itself doesn't necessarily mean anything. I've had that before, and it turned out to be accurate and wonderful and beautiful. But that's one thing to look out for. If it seems too good to be true, there is a possibility that it might be. Red flag coming from her was that she almost immediately had decided that I was the one for her. And she said as much, said that her intuition was telling her that I was the one. So red flag number two, they live completely, if they live, that there are all different kinds of borderlines out there, but if they are completely driven by their intuition, they have a psychic intuition that tells them everything, and it's flawless every time, and they know because they have seen you in dreams and you're the one. Again, that thing by itself isn't necessarily a problem, but you put all these things together, it starts to paint a picture of, something is wrong here. If you and the borderline start to share way too much intimate information about your lives, like you just start barfing up all of this, stuff about yourself, and start to create an intimacy right off the bat, super deep, hardcore intimacy right off the bat. Um, if within a couple of days or a week you're already planning your wedding, and you're both just sure that you're gonna, you know, those are some initial red flags. The what happened with me, which, as I'm looking at it, the red flags were there from the beginning. The first time that she contacted me, which was online through a dating site, and she left this message basically saying, "I've read your profile, and you are definitely, somebody that I think might be the one, and my instinct is telling me this, and I really trust, and you're the one." My first thought was, she was 20 years younger than me, and she was really beautiful and hot, and she, on paper, all of the things, she was a spiritual person. She, like me, had her own business, and wow, this is perfect on paper. We're a perfect match. And she's saying she's a spiritual person, and I was ready for it. Now, had I not been completely like in some pain, I was still recovering from the death of my real soulmate who passed away. If I had not been in that space and still mourning and wanting to replace her, I probably would have been, well, all right, we'll see. But I went, oh, thank you, I found her. So the other red flag is your response. Your response right off the bat, if you are willing to throw everything away and throw your life and merge your life with this person right off the bat, that means that something's up with you too. So the borderline and the codependent both operate from this core emptiness. This, lack of love, lack of feeling seen and loved and nurtured and understood, and, that your life is empty and you're looking for that other half to make your life full. You're both looking to be saved and taken care of, and that pulls you together. Now, what you don't realize as the codependent is that you are looking for your parent also. You're trying to relive the original trauma from, the dysfunctional bond you had with your mom and or your dad, and you're seeing that in this man or woman. It's usually a woman. I think women are more likely to be borderline than men. I think men are more likely to be narcissistic. So women tend to be more borderline, and men tend to be more narcissistic if they have the same core issue. Anyway. So what else? Another red flag is that, in the beginning, your borderline will idealize you. They will love you. Now, this mimicked my experience. I was with somebody who I would absolutely say was my perfect, twin flame soulmate. And one of the things that was beautiful about that relationship is that she really mirrored back to me my highest self, and she was just phenomenal for my self-esteem, and I felt so empowered being with her. So of course I wanted that again. What borderlines do is they idealize you. They are coming from the mindset of an infant or a toddler, and so they see everybody. This is really important. They see everybody in their life the same way an infant or a toddler looks at an adult. They see you as their parent. You don't know that because they have sophisticated brains, and they have very highly developed intellects, and they're usually very, when they choose to interact, they're usually very high functioning. So you think you're dealing with a fully mature adult, but on an emotional level, they're seeing you as a parent. And so what people call love bombing, which is just another way of saying they just overwhelm you with love and adoration, and they just pour it out. So that's a red flag when you meet somebody and immediately they've attached to you seemingly, and they start telling you how You're the one, you're the most amazing, you're the best person that's ever existed. Let me just say, I've had that experience before, and I know the difference between the real thing and the superficial thing. And what borderlines do is superficial. Now, they may take offense at that, but it doesn't mean that they're not sincere. It just means it's superficial. Superficial means it doesn't last, it doesn't go deep, and it doesn't hold. Their attachment towards you, their seeming love and adoration for you, isn't taking hold, and it isn't coming from a mature adult awareness. It's coming from a childish need. And so you don't know that. So that's the other thing. When they're just loving you and loving you and loving you, and if there's a feeling of there's nothing, that this person has no faults, you're going to have an experience that when they're love bombing you, you're going to have an experience of this is the most perfectly open, fearless, loving person that's ever existed. Uh, so that's a red flag. When it feels superficial, it's like cotton candy. It's really sweet and it's tasty, but once it dissolves in your mouth, it's gone. There's nothing there. So their love bombing is superficial in that way. It doesn't really take hold within them or within you. And in the moment, it's like this overwhelming, beautiful thing. But there's a part of you that's going to go, this doesn't seem real. So again, this is going to be challenging because if you have intimacy issues and somebody shows you real love, that's going to come up. There's going to be this isn't real. But if you're taken in by the spell and you find yourself really falling and believing and totally making yourself completely vulnerable. So another red flag is that there are no boundaries, that you start to drop all of your boundaries about the person and letting them in, and they drop all of their boundaries about you, and there's just no boundaries. You're spending 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You just met yesterday. That's a red flag. Again, each one of these red flags by themselves doesn't necessarily mean it's when you start piling them up. Now, these red flags to somebody who's not codependent, these red flags are gonna start to create a feeling of something doesn't feel right here. This doesn't feel healthy. I can't put my finger on it yet, but she's too into me too fast. It's too perfect. Those kinds of things. Those are red flags. But the honest truth is that somebody who's not borderline, somebody who's not codependent is not going to be attractive to borderlines. So borderlines are being attracted to what they relate to in you, which is your deep, unresolved loneliness and sadness and trauma and needing to be loved and healed and seen, because they share it. And it's very close that the kind of codependent that becomes attracted and attractive to a borderline, you guys share almost the exact same initial trauma. And maybe you do have the exact same initial trauma, it's just things changed a little differently. But if you have to put one, the borderline is here, they're at infant stage, and perhaps the codependent is somewhere above that, toddler or above maybe, in your emotional well-being. So you have a little more ability to stay consistent and follow through, whereas the borderline, when it comes to the fact when they get afraid, they have no ability to resist the impulse to attack and or isolate or ghost you, or whatever it is that they do, whatever their chosen habit of reaction to intimacy is. All right, so those are in the beginning, and so it's hard to see that, especially if you are codependent and you're needy. Let me be really clear. There are people who come onto this channel who want to identify themselves as empaths, and they'll say, I'm not codependent, I'm just very empathic. Or I'm not codependent, I just I'm just a caregiver. I have a lot of empathy and I care, and I really care for this person. That's all nonsense. I know you feel that's true. It's not to mean that you don't have, loving desires and all of that. It doesn't mean that you aren't somebody who isn't capable of giving lots of love. But the truth is that it's not unconditional, honest loving. It's not healthy. You have an agenda. If you are truly an empath, an empath means that you can pick up on other people's thoughts and feelings. And so an empath will say, I just feel the pain of others. Well, and if you're an empath, you're going to feel a lot more than other people's pain. You're going to feel, what's really going on in their unconscious, and you're going to know if somebody's healthy or not. So to use that as an excuse that I'm just really empathic, I just feel a lot, that doesn't excuse you throwing away your boundaries and allowing somebody to step all over you. It doesn't mean that. So what codependents, I think, need to realize as soon as possible is that their motives are not selfless. Their motives are selfish. They want somebody to love them, and the borderline has given them a taste of what they've always wanted. And so once you get that taste in your mouth, you become addicted. And then what ends up happening is once they've hooked you in with the love bombing, which again, they may not necessarily be doing it, don't get me wrong. Some borderlines, and I think the one I was with, I think she was calculating. There were times when she was love bombing and it was a calculated manipulation. And I think other times it was really honest. They don't know the difference, they're just doing what they do. But anyway, I forgot what I was saying. Your love is not selfless. You want that love. And once you get hooked into that from the love bombing or the idealization phase, then you become addicted to, oh my God, that's my fix. And then what happens is then they flip on you, or they start to reveal their victimhood and how they need you to take care of them, and then you become the caretaker. And so the negotiation, the unconscious energetic contract is the borderline says, I'm really screwed up, you must parent me, and in exchange I'll give you the love. In fact, I can remember times when my borderline was actually saying things on that level, and she meant it, but she couldn't follow through. So you've made a contract. Okay, I will take care of your whatever it is. Maybe I'll support you financially. I'll take care of you when you flip out and you get drunk and you go on drinking jags or whatever it is, and then I'll hold your but then you'll love me like you did that first week. And I remember telling her that. I remember once telling my borderline that after she was changing, I was like, I want to be with the person that was there that first week we got together. What happened to her? Of course, that pushed her off. Oh, I know what you're doing. I know. I said, what are you talking about? That's how you were with me. And then she kind of snapped out of it. To her credit, she tried. I could see her trying to snap out of it. She did it 2 or 3 times. It would never really take hold or last, but she had enough awareness. She did some other things that, it was clear that she knew there was something wrong with her. And, if she had the ability to be honest and see it as borderline, and if she had even known what borderline was, I don't know if she did or not, then she might have, maybe someday she'll get it, and whoever she ends up being with, great for them. So more red flags. All right, so that's sort of the beginning phase of the red flags. Other red flags would be obviously splitting. Obviously. Love you 1 minute, hate you the next. Or you're the best thing that's ever happened, and then if you're with a quiet borderline, then the next day you're going to get a very kindly worded, well thought out, but equally irrational reason why they can't be with you. Mine, when she was discarding me the last time, which was after Christmas Eve, love bombing and connection, and making plans for the future, and tons of promises she made to me. And I'm gonna be, one is I'm gonna be with you during the holidays because I know you're all alone and you don't have anybody here and you're in a strange country, and me crying and saying, yes, please, it's the worst time of year for me. I can't handle it. Please don't reject me. And okay, you'll stay here and be with me, and I'll give you my car, and this and that, and we'll do that, and on New Year's we'll blah blah blah, and our lives will blah, blah. Christmas Day. So I spent all morning writing this out, and then when of course I responded, um, with a lot of pain about, what do you mean? What happened to what you said last night? And she's like, why can't this just be, civil? I spent all morning writing this out, even though what she's writing out is, you're very, what she's saying, in this straight face, is that you're very dangerous for me, and I can't be around you. You are trying to destroy my self-esteem. And what? What do you mean? Oh my gosh, you're so emotional. Of course I am. You just took, everything that happened last night and all the plans, and you're just on Christmas Day destroying our connection and telling me that I'm trying to destroy you. And just because you're doing it with a smile on your face and in a calm voice, that doesn't mean you're not devastating me. Oh my God, you're so full on. Those kinds of things are a pretty serious red flag. But also, you will see micro shifts in the very beginning. So if I look back on it, there were micro splits where she would split and then gather herself in the beginning. I shared about one where, what would happen is that I always was uncomfortable. And here's another red flag. Even from the beginning, when we seem to be negotiating our connection in the very beginning, I felt unsure the whole time. I felt I felt anxious, I felt insecure, and I felt that I had to be perfect. I could lose this at any moment. I'm looking back on it, that wasn't a conscious feeling. There wasn't anything about it that I could put my finger on. It was just, I was so anxious and wanted so bad for her to like me that I couldn't. Now, there's some people that are like that naturally. I'm not. I'm usually very comfortable and very cocky, when it comes to dating a woman, and I'm like, I don't care, you want to be with me, and that serves me because then I feel, I look confident, and I am. So to have that level of confidence completely dashed to hell, and I was like, trying to make sure that I did everything right so that I would be accepted, and that constant, that looking back on it, that was a red flag. I wasn't conscious of it. It was too early for me to figure that out, but that's what was going on. But then fairly quickly there were these micro splits, and I shared about one where early on in the relationship, it might have been the second time that we spent time together, I drove down there to be with her. She was like 3 hours away, and I brought my surfboard with me. So I was in my passenger car, and so the passenger side of my car, the seats were down, and I had put my surfboard in there. And I had just gotten there, and of course, so I hadn't unloaded anything, and I had just gotten there, and blah, blah, blah. And then we were going to go, I think we were going to go to the sex shop and get some, sex toys or something like that. So of course I was, woohoo, right? So there was only one place to sit, which was in the passenger seat behind the driver's seat. So I get to the car, I say, oh, I'm sorry, I still got all my stuff in here. I hope you're okay. It'll be fun. I'll be like your chauffeur, and you can sit behind me. And so I got in, and I closed the door behind her, got in and started driving. And she said, stop. I have to pull over. Why did you put me back here? I need you. And then she was like grilling me on what my motivations were. And she was really trying hard because she said, I'm really triggered right now. And, why did you do that? And I'm like, it's just because of my surfboard's here, and I haven't taken it out. I'm sorry. Do you want me to take it out? Yeah, because yeah. So, okay, so I took my surfboard out and put it on the side of the house or whatever, and put the seat up, and, okay, there you go. Driving, and then she, stop the car. Okay, I need to, I'm looking at me. Why did you do that? I need to know exactly what your thoughts were about that. That was early on in the relationship. That's a pretty big red flag. It's not a big deal. You know, we were going to drive 10 minutes into town. It just wasn't a big deal. You know, somebody who isn't that sensitive is either going to say, hey, can you take the surfboard out? I'd like to sit next to you. You know, they take ownership for what they want. They don't take it personally. Or they'll be totally fine and go, oh yeah, and now you're my chauffeur and you're driving me around, and they can make something fun about it. You know, I was expecting that she was going to have that, that she was that kind of person, because she presented herself as being this really evolved person who's really into communication and really into talking about feelings. And the reality is that she was horrible at it. The times that she was this person who was really good at talking about feelings, as it turns out, was when she was playing. She wasn't trying to be fake. She was just, you know, she has this facade that she wears, which is the therapist, and she's brilliant at it. But it has nothing to do with really deep connection within her. It's, number one, a way to interface, but it's also a way to stay distant while she looks into you and pulls your feelings out and feeds off of your emotions. It's not a two-way street. But you don't know that. It's very sophisticated. So those are some of the red flags. People are asking me about the red flags, and I'll tell you why they're asking this question, is because the truth is that anybody who gets involved with an untreated borderline, you are going to either outright miss the obvious red flags, or you are going to see them and you are going to brush them aside. You're going to brush them aside because you have a selfish agenda to be loved and nurtured. And if you are secure in yourself, which we're not, if we're codependent, that's not your fault either. But if somebody is secure, they don't have a problem seeing those red flags, because they're not desperate for love and attention. So when the red flags pop up, like somebody's loving you too quickly, too much, you go, this is kind of dangerous. Let's step back a little bit. I'm going to give this a little space and watch what's going on with this person. Now, all you would have to do with the borderline, if you did that, which under normal circumstances is a healthy thing to do, you know, when you're talking with somebody and, you know, you ask, hey, what is it that, you know, tell me about this and that, and why did you do that? And if it's a sensitive subject, you say, but listen, if you don't want to tell me, that's totally okay. You won't hurt my feelings. If you say that to a borderline, they're going to go, why don't you want to tell me? They're going to get all butthurt about it. The point is that you are choosing either consciously or unconsciously to miss the red flags. So let's talk about the unconscious for a moment. It's very important to understand the concept of unconsciousness. So unconsciousness means you are not consciously aware. But just because you're not consciously aware doesn't mean that there isn't deliberate actions and motives taking place on the unconscious level. Unfortunately, the way the world works is you are still responsible for all of your deliberate thoughts, actions, and motives, even if you are not consciously aware of it. So that's, you know, recovery first starts with, I don't know how I got myself here, but I know I'm fully responsible. What have I done? So if you're a codependent, you don't have the right to be a victim. Because as I've said, non-codependents don't get pulled into and don't get fooled. They sense, they have an intuitive, which means realistic, energetic understanding of what's going on. They're not desperate, so when something doesn't feel right, they listen to that. When something doesn't feel right to the codependent, they go off of, you know, their selfish need to get what they want. You know, like gamblers. Gamblers gamble away their fortune in the hope that they might win big, even though they know the odds are against them. And this is what codependents do. They hope they're going to win big by getting all the love or getting all the sex or getting all the attention or getting all the whatever it is that they want, even though the odds are against them. That's why you keep coming back. People keep saying, you know, there's somebody here who says something about, What I mean by unconditional love is my repeated attempts to show them that I love them no matter what. The key word there is repeated. After one or two times of not being successful of giving your unconditional love, then we're talking that the odds are not in your favor, and continuing to gamble away your soul and your boundaries in the hopes you're going to win big this time is insane. You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. The codependent is the definition of insane because that's what they keep doing. The borderline has shown you the love that they give you is, for whatever reason, it might be sincere in the moment, but that doesn't prevent them from completely, totally changing their mind. It doesn't prevent them from cheating on you, betraying you, lying to you. You know, yours might do only one or a few or all of those things. Well, mine didn't lie to me. Okay, but they still destroyed the relationship on you. You know, mine wasn't, your classic borderline. She didn't rage at me. She was always very calm, and only a couple times did she flip and rage, but that was because she just the last shred of her self-defense mechanisms, weren't working because she was really regressed. So her quiet borderline was, a defense mechanism. Underneath it was the rage. So instead of just raging at me, she turned it inward and would meditate for 4 hours. Anyway, so I wanted to take a look at some comments here. I'm seeing some borderlines coming on to the channel, and again, this isn't meant for them, but if you're getting something out of it, it's great. Some of them say, I appreciate what you're saying. You're not right about this. Yeah, I know I'm not going to be right 100% of the time because I'm not borderline, and I'm okay with that. It's really more important about, for codependents, they need to have the ability to separate. So even if I say something that may not be accurate to your specific thing, or maybe borderlines in general, that was a mindset that helped me to go, oh, this person's bottom line, this person is incapable of giving me what I want. So I'm wasting my time trying to get them to love me. And I think that's a really helpful awareness for codependence. Yeah, so Brandon Daly, I don't know if I responded to this again. So, Brandon Daly left a comment on an earlier video, and he talked about his unconditional love and why they can't accept it. And I pointed out, said, your love isn't unconditional. You're not coming from this moral place of perfection and you just love unconditionally. You have conditions, and those conditions are selfish, meaning that you want something from them. And that's you're trying to force somebody to give you something that they're incapable of giving. That's not unconditional, that's selfish, and it is abusive. Just because you're the victim doesn't mean that you don't have your way of abusing as well. It's abusive on both ends. But on the surface, you're the one that's being attacked, but you're a codependent, and you have your selfish, destructive behavior, and that is to continually pursue somebody to love you when they can't and won't. So that's not unconditional. So he says again, when I said unconditional, I just meant my repeated attempts to forgive her. I already talked about this. Well, that's the point. You keep trying to force it on the situation and it's not working. That shows your selfish need, that you have boundary problems and you're not respecting the boundaries that the situation is throwing up, which is she keeps rejecting you and hurting you. That's a boundary that you need to respect. Get the hell away. The snake keeps biting you. It doesn't, just because you want to pet that snake doesn't mean that, you're not at fault for keep sticking your hand in there. You have your selfish needs are driving you and blinding you to your own destructive selfishness, and you get to hide behind the unconditional love, the martyr. And it's not. It's really destructive to everybody. I just meant my repeated attempts to forgive her and be there for her no matter what, obviously. And then he says, but you are right, my love for her was not unconditional. It is in fact conditional because I eventually laid down the law and made some boundaries. Those were my conditions. That's not what I mean. Laying down the law, you made boundaries, but that doesn't mean your love was conditional in a good way. Again, you're trying to shape it in a way that you're the knight in shining armor and you're the martyr, and that's not what's going on. You're out of control. You're not choosing to do this because you have this personal philosophy of being the good person and always taking it on the chin and turning the other cheek. You're doing it because you're addicted and you're selfish and you're trying to get them to be something they're not. So, you have to see that. So, Brandon, take a look at codependence. Because in my experience, you're a codependent and you're in denial. And I think you need to become aware. Anyway, and then he says, intimacy means the preservation and integrity to push through hard times and have adult, mature coping skills. That's not what I meant by intimacy. I just meant being vulnerable. Intimacy is neither good nor bad. It's just a state of being vulnerable. How people choose to respond is something else. Again, you're putting all this morals behind what you do. And I really would, suggest that you be willing to drop that and take a look at your selfish ends and stop trying to, idealize yourself and make yourself into this perfect person and you're this perfect person and they're screwed up and you're going to save them. Again, it would be really helpful for you to take a look at what codependence means. Anyway, so I'm not going to read all of that. Here's an interesting one. He's responding to somebody else and he says, that's something too I've noticed as a recurring theme with friends of mine who have also been discarded by BPD exes, is that they always say, meaning the BPDs always say, that you're a, quote, a controlling, oppressive stalker. Listen to this. When in reality you are forced to play detective because the person you love is being a deceitful, shady, pathological liar who continues to cross your boundaries, ghost you with no explanation for weeks or even months at a time, meanwhile talking nothing but mad shit about you to all your mutual friends behind your back. What the hell, man? Who forced you to do that? They don't force you to do anything. You choose to do it. Somebody who isn't codependent, the moment one of those things happens, you're forced to play detective because the person you love, well, what does that mean? You love? What does that again, you're using love as though because you love them, it's okay that you are an oppressive stalker. It's not okay. What you mean by love is need, because I need them to make me happy and love me back because I can't resist these impulses. Because of that, I'm forced. And she did it because she's deceitful, shady, lies, crosses boundaries, ghosts for weeks or even months at a time. So that's more than once. It's because if it happens once, you say she ghosted me for a month. And after that, I was done. But for you, weeks or months. So this has happened multiple times. And you keep going back. Nobody forced you to do that. So I have to, again, classic, like chronic codependence. And codependents are stalkers. It's not your job to stalk them and find out where they've been or what they're doing. Nobody forced you to do that. Somebody who's not codependent, the moment somebody betrays them once on any of these levels, they say, I'm really hurt, but I am done. You are out. You have lost the right to be in my life. You not only didn't do that, you kept going harder. Every time she rejects you or ghosts you or whatever it is, talks mad shit about you, that just makes you chase after her more. There's something bonkers within you, and it's called chronic codependence. You say, these people are sick. That's right. They are infecting others and spreading chaos to good people and ruining their lives. Codependence is not something to be proud of. It is not a sign of moral strength. You are selfish. You want somebody who is a toddler at best to treat you like an adult, and you keep insisting that they treat you like an adult, even though they keep showing you with their behavior and in many times their speech that they don't want you around. Leave them the hell alone. They keep coming back to you because they're incapable of not coming back to you. And you take advantage of that. And you think, this time I will use my love as a weapon, my unconditional love as a weapon to get them to love me back. And this time it'll work. And this time I can keep them hostage and they'll love me. You're wanting to feed off of them the same way they want to feed off of you. But that's what you're addicted to. The person that's never available and never delivers on the promise. That's your, core issue from childhood. Your mother or whoever didn't ever love you, and the promise of them ever loving you was never fulfilled. And you're replaying that with the borderline. So again, look into codependence. I strongly recommend you go to Coda, because you are classic in denial codependent. So I'm singling out this guy, but I'm talking to everybody, because if you've been with a borderline, you've done exactly what I've just talked about. All right, so I think that was everything I wanted to talk about. Sorry, just trying to see if there was something that I feel like there was something that I wanted to respond to, but I'm not finding it here. Yeah. Anyway, so let's see. So yes, somebody here says, the only thing I disagree with, Mike, is that you can immediately pick up on a borderline and red flags. I can understand that after a few dates maybe, but mine didn't tip her hat until about the third date. Okay, let me just take you at your word. I don't know. I'm not you. I wasn't there. I don't know how sophisticated her thing is. I don't know. Third date is still really early on. And if at the third date, wait. I can understand after a few dates, but mine didn't tip her hat until about the third date, and this is after I studied BPD. Why were you studying BPD before the third date? Is it because she told you she was BPD? All right, so you didn't say, but either way, if she told you she was BPD, then you knew. The red flag was there from the beginning. She handed it to you. If she didn't tell you, then what was it that happened on the first or second date that made you go look it up? And either way, now, the red flag is there. So do you hear the disconnect here? You're saying, I couldn't see the red flag because I was already studying BPD. Why? That's just not something I've ever done in my life. I've never gone on a date with somebody after 2 or 3 dates and, on the first or second date, gone and looked at BPD. Were you dating somebody else that was BPD? Then you know ahead of time. So anyway, red flag on even if I take you at your word, it wasn't until about the third date. So are you hedging? Was it the second date? About the third date. Even if it was the third or the fourth date. And you have a perfect memory. Oh, that's frightening. Nobody wants to go out with somebody who has a perfect memory, because, they'll use that against you. Anyway, I don't know. I'm not judging you. I don't know you. I have a perfect memory, and she did well the first couple of times. That's even a strange way of putting it as well. That's like a student. It's like, a student did well their first couple of tests. So you see what I mean? It's just, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just nitpicking on words, but she's already under the microscope and you're not picking up on it. I have a perfect memory, and she did well the first couple of times, and the dates were short. It was when she started involving her kids and family that she demonstrated her BPD side, and once again that genie was out of the bottle. It was insanity. So you're saying by the third date, She demonstrated her BPD side because of kids and family. The third date is early on. That's about as close to immediately as you want to get. Why are you trying to use this as an excuse for why you got into a long-term relationship? Third date is really early on. Somebody does, if you're not codependent and somebody on the third date reveals some ugly skeleton in the closet, that's a big deal. At the very least, you back up. Or you say, hey, you know what? I really liked dating you, but I've decided, to be single, or I met somebody else, or you're not my type, or whatever it is. That people do that all the time. Nobody forced you to keep going, especially after date 3 you saw. Do you see? So you are just telling me from the beginning you knew because you were already looking at BPD. I'm just pointing it out because the disconnect is really clear. You're saying, how can you pick up on the red flags? I only saw it on the third date. You even said you had short dates. So that means you didn't have a whole lot of time with them, which means it was very early on. And so if you only had short dates and by date 3, her BPD comes out of the closet and you see it, you saw it from the beginning. There was no reason for you. You hadn't invested time and had kids with her or, all of that. I mean, for me, here's another red flag is that the girl I was with, after about a month, and by then, it's not an excuse. I still could have left at any time, but I was emotionally attached and involved, and we had plans, and we were going to do this, and we were going to do that, and we had invested on working through, working through issues. And then I found out that she actually didn't have her own business, that she was getting money from the government for depression, that she was on Suboxone, which is a medication, a hardcore medication for heroin addicts. So she was a heroin addict, and 3 or 4 other things. And that was like a huge revelation. And there's a red flag right there. The person that they originally present to you, you find out is not accurate. Now, we all do that to some degree. We all give a good impression, but there's a difference between giving a good impression and giving a completely false impression. So there's another red flag. But that didn't happen on the third date. That was, a month into it, after, intense spending weekends and weeks with each other and all that. You're talking about you had short little dates, and on date 3, you saw she had BPD, and you kept going, and you're wanting to argue with me about you can't immediately pick up on the red flags? I'm just going off what you're telling me here. Anything else here? All right, I think that's about it for now. All right, so those are some of my thoughts about red flags and what have you, and codependence. So thanks again, guys. I think I'm going to go do some surfing. I'm long overdue for some interaction with Mother Nature. All right, talk to you guys later.